cleaning up the body shouldn't be quite so bad because at least there are no threads there to try and get that grease out of. But yes, this stuff is very, very sticky. Look at that coming off there. It's terrible stuff. That stop pin there for the focus scale ring, that is not helping me with access to the surfaces to clean them. But this is all just a tedious business. So I've got to clean this front face, get all that green grease off the front surface here, the inside edge, and then I've got to do the inside surface of this mount. With a bit of luck, everything will move smoothly after that, and I can apply some clean grease. I'll do the inside edge, and in this rear piece here, that groove is where that retaining ring comes up against that surface, and you can probably see how much of that green rubbish is just filling up that recess. Okay, well, I'll carry on cleaning this piece up. Alright, well, I'll try that. I've also got to clean the inner helical, and this again is the same stuff, the green grease, and it's very, very unpleasant. So what I'm doing here is basically getting as much of the gunk off as I can. It actually makes the surface feel rough here, where it's dried on and set like a lacquer. It's lumps and bumps of the stuff. This is a very fine thread on the helical here, and very difficult to get that stuff out. And the threads, what I'd normally do in a case like this is get started in the outer helical. Doesn't even want to start. It feels sticky. That's better. And just work the two backwards and forwards with some solvent in there. And that'll tend to rub that rubbish away. But unfortunately with this stuff, patience is the name of the game. You've got to be patient. It can take a long time to get this rubbish out of the thread. So I'm using the solvent and I'm wiping the inside threads and the outside threads to remove as much of the stuff as I possibly can. And it doesn't matter how many times I clean it, you can see the green coming away, so there's more grease still trapped down in those threads. And unless I get it out, it'll be pointless just putting fresh grease on top of it, because the action will still be stiff from all that space in those threads filled up with filthy dried grease. That's starting to feel a bit better. Just put a bit of naphtha on there and work this a bit. If these weren't, it wasn't painted numerals here for the focus scale, you could probably put the whole lot into a container filled with solvent and stick the container into the ultrasonic cleaner and leave it to percolate for some length of time to break the rubbish free, dissolve it. Starting to feel a lot better. So with the focus adjustment, you have two areas that are going to cause friction and cause stiffness. The first is obviously in the lens helical. If it's stiff between here and here, that will cause stiffness in your adjustments. And the other is between here and the mount. So as this is stiff to rotate in the mount, as it was, that will also make your focus adjustments very stiff. So if you take your time this will all work, things will go, and stuff should happen. Let's flip this bracket over and have a look at how that moves. Well, that moves smoothly on there. I'm quite happy with the feel of that. I'm quite confident that'll move nicely with lubricant. And the inner helical and the outer helical. Yeah, they're better. Now, we've got to get these two components timed correctly. Now, how I'd done that was, you remember I put a little scribe mark on here, and that was to line up with this little hole here when the front surfaces are dead level. So it's a multi-start thread, there's lots of positions there, and there you can see I'm about, nearly half a turn out. Let's come around a bit, start again. This always takes a lot of time, trying to get the multi-start thread started in the right position. Now I'm completely half a turn out. Okay, so there I'm down too deep at that stage. So I need to rotate this piece clockwise before I reinsert it. Let's try there. Getting a fine multi-start thread like this started requires patience. If you rush it, or if you try and force it, there's nothing surer than that you'll damage one of those tiny threads. I'm just checking that here now, and that's in the correct position. So I've got that timed correctly at that position. Now, without unscrewing that completely, I'm going to take some helical grease, this stuff, Helimax XP optical, what's they call it? Optical and instrument helical grease. Going to apply this in multiple spots around the outside of that female thread that you can see there. So I've got the inner screwed most of the way out. You generally don't need lots of helical grease. Usually it's no advantage to have too much. What it'll tend to do is clog things up and make the action stiff. That is really very nice. That action is nice and smooth. That's perfect. So I don't need to use helical grease for the other piece. It's we don't need anything as fine as that. What have I got here? I could use the helical grease, but I could just as easily use this. And this is just a synthetic grease. Run some on that front edge and on the inside, and at the back here. Let's put this in position. Just checking the feel of that. It feels very good. I'm going to flip this over again, so I'll partly close the front. The bellows get caught in the back and stop me being able to flip this over easily. That's it. Get my focus scale ring in the right way round. That was it there. And I should be able to fit my retaining ring in there, and that recess that the retaining ring drops down into, I'm just making sure that there's a little touch of grease in there. Doesn't need much and it'll distribute itself around there quite nicely. And get my retaining ring back on. And the retaining ring may or may not go on easily. Well, that's on and it moves smoothly. See, I've got a bit of tightening up work to do here though. Okay, so I've just tightened that up. That's looking good. Let's nip that up tight. Flip this back over. So the focus scale ring moves smoothly and the inner helical moves smoothly in the outer helical, so that's all good. At this stage I can put the bellows back to the front standard, and then the shutter and lens assembly can go back in. Okay, let's see if I can get these screws back in. Oh, that went fairly smoothly. Right, to get the screw seated into the hole in the plate on the bellows, and the bellows of course were partly retracted, so then I had to push the bellows forward working inside the bellows, putting screws in is always tricky because it's dark in there. Everything is matte black, so it's hard to see what you're doing, and fair to say it's impossible to get it on a camera, so you'll see nothing. But the procedure is to get one screw started, don't tighten it up all the way, just get one screw started, then do the next screw. Now, yeah, I wasn't seeing the hole there. I'm not sure what had happened. I suspect that felt fibre paper washer or whatever it was on the back of the stand that had shifted and covered the hole. I can't get that screw to start. Make sure I've got my other ones loose and give it a very good have another go. Now we're in business. I've got all 4 screws started. I'll tighten those and then we can fit the shutter and lens assembly. Okay, this little locating pin on the back of the shutter at this point locates in here. This loop on the shutter housing locates on that post. That's what stops the shutter from turning. And because the shutter can't turn and this pin is located on there, it means that this piece can't turn. So that as we turn the outer helical, it means the inner helical moves inwards and outwards. So that's how that works. Our shims, we've got 2 shims here. Let's get them in place. That one's a bit split, but it'll be okay. And this one here looks like drafting paper or something. It's quite strange. But that's actually, I've seen that before on Agfa cameras. So they must have wanted paper to use as shims of a particular thickness, and that was just the right thing. Okay, so where that locating pin runs through there, I'm just going to run a touch of grease in there for good measure and get this shutter on the body. Now I don't know whether the pin has dropped into place on the back here or not. It looks like it doesn't. Yeah, it has now. The pin's just dropped in. So as I rotate this, the shutter and lens assembly is moved forward or backwards. So that's all seated there correctly. The shutter release is correctly seated underneath here. And all that's needed is for me to fit the retaining ring on the back of the shutter. And that might go smoothly. It has been known to happen. Normally I would start something like that using the tip of the screwdriver to poke and prod it until the thread starts to engage. And I can tell at that stage whether it's engaged correctly. The last thing you want to do is get one of these retaining rings cross-threaded. Because if you get it cross-threaded, you will never... Yeah, that focus is nice and smooth now. That's wonderful. That's textbook. Yeah, if you get that cross-threaded, you will never ever get the thing going on smoothly again. Having that in place, I can use my retaining ring spanner now to tighten that up. I'll just move that focus to the close focus end of the scale so that my retaining ring falls down into the helical and engages easily. That was it. So now my lens and shutter assembly are correctly positioned. The shutter is correctly positioned. I'll give that taking lens are clean. And that is how the focus adjustment should move on one of these cameras. And as you saw, that's how the focus adjustment hardly ever works unless you've freshly serviced it. Thanks for watching.